What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of A Thinking Man's Podcast. If you guys are listening and you aren't already, please go ahead and subscribe to the YouTube channel, like the video, leave us a comment, send it to a friend, all that good stuff. As you may already know, Tommy and I both offer online coaching. You guys can hit us up on Instagram or the links below. And so today, Tommy and I are going to be discussing or revisiting the pilot episode of A Thinking Man's Podcast, which was titled, If I Knew Then What I Know Now. And basically the gist of that was Tommy and I went through certain things that we felt like we had messed up or made mistakes with early on in our journey and had come to learn better. And so now over a year later, with the show developing into a channel and another year of bodybuilding and coaching under our belts, Tommy and I are going to revisit it. And we're going to touch on certain things that, looking back, we probably could have done better or in a different way. So, Tommy, what do you got, buddy? You want to start us off? You're at the opposite end of the spectrum of me. You're at walking around peeled skinless, and I'm walking around with fat hanging off of my fat. So, any prep-related things that you want to touch on?
Yeah. So this is and it's an interesting tie-in to like our dichotomy is what I thought then was, and we could say this would be 2014, 16, 17, and then even a lot of the years in between 17 and 21 when I was going to get on stage, but life happened and then pandemic and all that. I didn't realize how, I shouldn't say important. I just didn't realize that the success and the trajectory of a prep was truly determined by the off season. I'm not run down right now. I'm not, I can remember in preps past, like there's no way I could be inside 4 weeks to a show and on a podcast with you able to have a conversation. Like there's no way I wouldn't want to talk at all. And I still have moments like that, but like, yeah, I'm busy sending looms to clients for updates. I'm having consults for new clients. I'm doing podcasts with you, Turner, and we're doing 2 previews and stuff. Like I'm more busy now than I was than we were when we started this podcast, and we both weren't in prep. So I get tying all that together. Like I didn't miss in the off season. I was I've been a full-time bodybuilder for years now, but it really was clicking and, coming out of prep in 2021, 2022, other than some injuries and stuff, I had a great year. Like did not miss for 12 months as far as like, I never had a losing streak. And that's what I talk about. Sometimes, people get so neurotic about, oh, I missed a meal. What do I do? Like you missed it. It's all right. Just don't miss enough. Like, don't ever start a losing streak. Don't let one bad day turn into a week and then half a month's gone. And then, then you lost the month. That's where I created I broke the year down into quarters, like 90-day blocks, 4 quarters in a game. I need to win the first quarter to do better in the second quarter. Where am I at halftime? All right, third quarter. Now we're pushing to the end of the year. That's how I broke down the 12 months last year. And I think that's why prep is, I don't want to say I haven't had any hardships or struggles, or I had a few hard days, which I've told you about. But other than that, like I'm not run down. I'm training, I've had my injuries and stuff, but cardio's cardio, training's training. I get my meals in. Honestly, like doing the prep is kind of like, I got to do all that shit, but it's because and then I just got to get back to, podcast projects, clients, growing my business. So what I thought then was like, I'd always trained, but I definitely had losing streaks. I would have 3 days where just meals were whatever, fast food, bullshit, eat like a bird, and then eat really big, like I'm having like a Juan Morel style meal. And then, and it was just very like inconsistent with the nutrition. So that showed in my prep, because then in prep you get there and it's like, you're not fat, but you're not really in a place where you're starting prep at a great place. There was no pre-preps back then. It was just like,
right,
hell, I remember like trying to eat as much as I could the night before prep started. Like, all right, I'm getting a pizza, I'm getting ice cream, and it's like,
Pizza.
oh, I just
Yeah.
spiked my blood glucose for the first week of prep.
Right. Let me put an additional 2 pounds of fat on in one night. Great.
Yeah, just so I can see that number be higher on the scale for the start of prep.
Yeah.
And then, you know, it was my own personal obsession with wanting to suffer and work hard. That's what I equated contest prep to being, which it is. You're going to work as hard as you've ever worked in your life, especially if you're newer. But at the same time, it's retaining muscle and dropping body fat is the end goal of a contest prep, not to see how close to parodying like an MMA fight camp or a Navy SEAL operation you can do. Like, you know, even in 2021 with, you know, driving with the windows up in 105-degree heat, seat heaters on, hoodie. Like I always want to do shit to make everything harder. And that's just my mindset. And I'm not doing that this year because I know it doesn't help the end product. So I guess there's a maturity part of it too. But, you know, long story long, there's a reason I preach to my clients like, hey, you want to do a show? Okay, well, we're doing one in a year. That process starts now, 52 weeks out. Because the consensus is a lot of people aren't thinking like that. I wasn't back then. That's how I know I can pre-plan for my clients and be like, hey, I'm your brain. All you need to do is execute. But if it's not important enough to you to put in 52 weeks towards that show day, you might not have the stomach to work as hard as I had to work in prep. Like a lot of people don't want to, and they show up fat on stage. Like I got in shape, but it was fat loss that, like I heard Phil Viz say something the other day, like you can get in shape, but it shouldn't be like jumping off the top story of a building to get to the bottom. It should be taking the elevator one floor at a time to pull fat off that way. And you'll come in much better looking, you know, with an actual package that looks like something. So the off season dictates the course of the prep.
That is such a great point, because to expand on that, like you were saying, this is by far the best you've ever looked and you're the least run down. It's because you did a year's worth, 2 years, 3 years worth of legwork prior to that. I think a big mistake that people make is that they're part-time bodybuilders in the off season. And then because they've lost or given up all of that time that they could have been using to progress and, you know, eat more food, grow more tissue, build your work capacity, all this stuff in the off season, then they have to turn on the jets and go 110% in prep to make up. Like mentally, they're making up for the fact that they were 60% in the off season. Whereas like if you're just 100% in during the off season, that 100% is all you need. You don't need to be a psycho. You don't necessarily need to fucking kill yourself from 16 or 20 weeks out. Yeah, from, you know, depending, you know, we've talked about it, it's not even really a number in terms of weeks. It's more so just body fat, but like, you know, an average timeline for a prep, if you're on a good pace to be ready by inside 8 or 6 weeks out, yeah, there's going to be some fucking dog days and it's going to get progressively more difficult. But like you said, there are times I'm describing exactly how I did bodybuilding the first couple of years, where I was a part-timer in the off season. You know, I would be on a meal plan and be on my shit Monday through Friday. And then I had a long-term girlfriend that hated bodybuilding. So I would give her the weekends and we would just bullshit. And then prep would come around and I was fat and didn't work with a coach. So now I'm just handing this fat canvas to somebody and saying, here's 16 weeks, figure it the fuck out. Like, yeah, they're going to drop you off the top floor because they have no other choice. Their reputation is on the line as a coach. And it's either you're going to show up fat and that ruins their reputation, or they're going to bury you and try to get you in shape. So that's for the people that are really wanting to do something with competitive bodybuilding, not just as a lifestyle, or, you know, not just they're gonna compete here and there as a hobby or like a bucket list type thing or whatever. Like you actually want to do something and make something of competitive bodybuilding for yourself. It has to be all in all the time. It just has to be. Sure, there's scheduled, you know, you can schedule in times where you can live life so that it's not destroying your life otherwise. Like, 1 week out of the year, if you bring your wife or your girl on vacation, okay, that's fine.
Holidays.
Yeah, holiday, like you're gonna eat on Christmas, you're gonna eat on Thanksgiving, great, fine. Even there will probably, if you have a decent coach or a decent self-awareness, there's gonna be weeks during the year that are not full throttle, where it's less volume or it's less, less training sessions, whatever it is. But the big overarching theme is just consistency, man. And we get these messages all the time from kids. Oh, how do you grow and stay lean like you guys and all this stuff? And it's like, motherfucker, it just takes time. It just takes time and consistency. Like, I was the one asking people those questions for the first 11 years of bodybuilding. And then now I get these messages from people where they're like, man, how are you growing and staying lean? Like, you look like you're getting ready for a show. And it's like, because I've just nailed it for like 6 or 7 years in a row, just been fucking all in. And it works both ways. That's how you build tissue, and then that's how you set up good contest preps. Because guess what? The more muscular you are, the more food you're eating, and the more you can handle in the gym, the easier a job prep becomes. So for me, on the big one that I wanted to point out, because I have a couple of other ones, like you said, we're at like the opposite ends of the spectrum. So I brought some things that I wanted to reflect on off season wise. And I have two that are good, and we're going to talk about them. But the main one, and I've talked about it recently on the show, is eating whole foods. I look back and feel like I wasted so many meals and so much time and left so much progress on the table by relying on quick and easy. And knowing how bodybuilding works and how life works, if things are quick and easy, it is never going to yield a long-lasting, impressive result. So again, like there will be people in the comments, I guarantee that either in the comments of this video or send me a message, and they're going to say, man, I made great progress and I do 3 shakes a day and look at Hunter Labrada and all this stuff. And it's like, okay, but you could have been better. Like, I'm just not going to argue with you anymore. And I had coaches tell me this, and, I should have listened. I hired that coach for a reason, because they had more experience. They've worked with more people. They've grown big bodybuilders. And for example, I worked with Phil Viz for a while. And I remember asking him at one point, I was just bogged down appetite wise. And a big thing with him is he always pushed like a huge meal one, even though I would train later in the day. And I remember texting him one time and being like, hey man, can I just switch this over to cream of rice and whey, and I'll do like some fruit and some peanut butter? And point blank, he responded and said, you can, but it's not as effective. And I remember reading that and just being like, what do you mean it's not as effective? It's food. Like, the macros are the same, the nutrients are the same. And fellas, let me tell you something. I am here to tell you now, he was right. It is not as effective. I have stuck to solely meat and rice, and I have never looked like this. There's just something about the way it sounds, bro, and this isn't even like some type of official term, but the weight and the food sticks to you better when it's whole food. It sticks around to you better. So that's a simple one. It sounds easy enough. Like, hey, just eat whole foods, eat meat and rice 6 times a day. But it's a challenge. And especially as you start getting into calorie totals, that would be a challenge, even if you were using easier options. Man, I can talk about this every week on this podcast, and every day when meal 5 rolls around and I'm fucking stuffed to the gills, the inner bitch voice in my head at least once will say, you could just do whey and cream of rice. And I actively have to fucking tell myself, I am not doing this. I don't care if I have to sit at this plate for 70 minutes chewing this shit. It is going down, and it's going to be whole food. And it makes a world of a difference, guys. I have no reason. I have no stock in Tyson chicken or any of this other shit. Like, I stand to gain nothing from telling you guys to eat solely whole foods. Truth be told, I am a sponsored athlete with a supplement company that would hate to hear me say this. But the truth is, that shit that seems quick, that seems easy, it's quick and easy for a reason. So that's my big one. That's the biggest tangible difference as far as things looking back that I would have changed. I know if I went back 5 years and just ate meat and rice up until this point, I would be bigger, leaner, and stronger at this moment if I did just that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I can second everything you just said, because I made that same mistake too. When I started with Dusty in 2017, he sent me my first meal plan, and there were no shakes, and I had never worked with a coach who didn't use whey isolate. So I just asked. I was like, because at first I was like, man, 7 food meals, like there's no way as a firefighter I'm eating 7 times a day. And I asked why, and he was just like, you can do shakes if you have to, but I just find that it's not as effective. So he said the same thing. And then I remember hearing a podcast probably around that same time, or maybe even before, Justin Harris broke it down and said, you can do whey isolate, but it's not as effective. It's better than skipping a meal, but it's not as effective as whole food. And I'm not going to try to paraphrase. It's something to do with the thermal effect of food versus powder. I don't know. It's beyond me. He's way smarter than me. But yeah, think about the guys that are saying it, that are like Justin Harris, huge, Dusty, huge. Like the biggest guys who have to eat the most food are telling you that trust me, they would rather drink shakes if it worked too. So no one's trying to pull a fast one over you. It is what it is. Like I remember when I was personal training, 40 hours a week, and I had to do shakes because I was on the floor. I was poor scheduling. I'd be on the floor 5 clients in a row, no breaks. And it's like, I got a shake in one hand, a bagel in the other, and I'm counting to 10 with mouthful of bagel. And, I can say, I was doing as much as 3 to 4 shakes a day. There was progress happening, but it absolutely wasn't as much progress if I had a situation where I could eat whole food. Because when I did get done with that and start eating more whole food, next thing you know, I made a 10-pound jump in the off season. I'm no longer this guy who's stuck at 228, 229. Now I'm pushing 240. So you're 100% right on that. And this whole podcast is about us not necessarily calling out younger people. We are you. We literally were you, and we're saving you money on whey isolate. I still use whey with clients, but it's 1 shake a day. I think as a post-workout, you can leverage a lot of calories really quick with, bananas, some of the carb powders, some of the quicker digests that you can hammer home some of that, and then take maybe a couple hours and then have a big food meal. But outside of that, especially if you think meal 1 should be a shake, you're probably a pussy and need to consider giving up bodybuilding. There's no reason you can't eat whole food out of bed. Yeah. Unless maybe if you're somebody who's training early morning and you got your own system, but meal 1 should be fucking large when it comes to food. And that's if you work a 9 to 5, that's if you are, doing the life Joe and I do, meal 1's heavy.
Man, and I'll tell you,
I face spread for me in the off season. I got 5 plates in front of me.
I train after meal 1, and that's the biggest whole food. My pre and post meals are the biggest of the day. By the time I get to that meal 5, it's not even my biggest meal. It's just I'm so bogged down. I'm like, fuck, I start almost wanting to negotiate with myself, and you just have to silence it. And to give him credit, because you pointed it out, Justin Harris is the one who has gotten me back to that. I haven't talked about it much, but Justin has been doing my diet since I got back from my gyno surgery. And I can't thank him enough, because the move back to whole food has just gotten me back into the mentality of just being a big fucking hardcore bodybuilder and slamming food to get big. And I saw him, I'm sure there's the thermic effect of food and a deeper reasoning behind it, but I saw him break it down in a pretty simple way. And he had said, think about any time when you were a kid or gotten sick or whatever, and you throw up and the stuff that you see in the toilet is something that, it's like a steak that you ate 2 days ago and it's still in your gut. And it's muscle building is such a slow process. And we utilize such a small percentage of the protein or the amino acids that we're actually consuming that actually convert to muscle tissue. So basically, you just want it sitting around all the time so that when the process is happening, it's just sitting there for the body to pluck away at it. Whereas, like, the marketing was absolutely genius. It exploded an entire industry. But when you think about it in those terms, it's almost ass backwards to do a whey isolate or think like, oh man, I need this digested fat. Like, it's not speeding up the process of building muscle tissue. It's just speeding up the process of which your body gets rid of it. So if anything, that is like a pretty simple explanation as to why, yeah, it makes sense that it would be less effective. Now, of course, like you said, like, you're going to eat 5 or 6 whole food meals and you need to just slam tons of fucking carbs post workout, and you want to do like cereal and whey or something. Like, I program that for a lot of people. It's enjoyable. And then I have found that something like that can absolutely help with adherence because you're just shoving a huge bowl of cereal every day. That feels like you're almost having a cheat every day. But use it in moderation. And I would say use it as a one-off thing and not as a staple like I did, or like you did, like you said, where I've done 3 or 4 out of my 6 or 7 meals are based around whey protein. And like you said, again, progress was happening, sure. But then I look back and wonder if I would eat chicken and rice 6 times a day during that stretch of progress, what I might be looking like right now. So, yeah, I think, the big reason that we started on Instagram Live and then we turned it into a podcast was just like, hey man, we've been doing this for so long. Like, why don't we put out some information to help the next generation of guys that are coming up? And if you guys are listening to it now, man, that is just the number one thing. Like, if you look at the biggest guys that step on a bodybuilding stage, they're the guys that trained the most brutally in the gym and they ate the most meat and rice. They ate more real food than anybody. Yes, of course, there'll be some fucking goofball in the comments that say, yeah, what about the 1,000 milligrams of tren? Yeah, drugs are part of it. But there's a lot of fucking dorks that I see at LA Fitness that take more drugs than you and me, Tommy, and they don't look like they lift weights. So what are the 2 determining factors there? It's the training and it's the food.
Yeah. No, I mean, I dare to say that, like, last 2022, I ate more whole food than I've ever eaten in my bodybuilding career.
Yeah, and you're peeled at 230 right now.
But that, my digestion was better than when I was doing 4 shakes a day.
Yep.
So as easily digestible and as bioavailable as whey isolate is, my bro science experience tells me that my gut and my body prefer whole food when it comes to waistline, gut health, no heartburn, no bloating, no gas. I mean, it's down to a system where, if I have something off with me, I could pinpoint it. Like, oh, I had bad sushi like a couple weeks ago. I told you that. I'm like,
yeah,
that fucking destroyed me for 24 hours.
Yeah.
But before, man, when I was doing that shake life, dude, like, my gut was a fishbowl. It was miserable.
Yeah.
So, and I was using the highest, I was using the highest quality whey protein isolates on the market. I wasn't using like cheap. And I remember being 19 and having to use the Walmart 6-star protein that's $19.
Oh, 100%, dude. 100%.
Shit water.
That or the body tech from fucking Vitamin Shop. God knows what's in that. But just quickly, like, just think about it. Like, how long has whey protein isolate been around? Just roughly, I would guess less than 40 or 50 years, right?
How long? Yeah. I remember guys saying they used to drink like a canned, it was like a can of it. It came in.
So, okay, that's, in the grand scheme of things, incredibly new, incredibly new and produced by humans. Whereas humans have been chewing and swallowing meat for, I don't know, 10 million years or whatever the fuck, however long we've all been around. Like, so it just makes sense. Like, you want to talk about bioavailability, by the textbook, you're right. Like, they make these things that are super bioavailable and all this stuff.
I bought into it.
I did too. I've been through, man, I think about the number of 5-pound jugs that I bought when, like, my bank account was obscenely low, but I needed that $54 5-pound jug of fucking strawberry whey. Like it's almost embarrassing when I look back on it. But anyway, moving on. You got another one, contest prep?
Yeah. And this one is it seems basic, and I think that's why it's easy to mess up. Especially when you're newer and don't have a lot of skin in the game. I mean, it's taken me, I'm still like, there's still days where I have to talk myself out of certain things. Like, contest prep is not the time to try new things. It's not the time to call Hail Marys. It's not the time to get anxious and react to that anxiety with more. Yeah. It's such like, and I've realized this more and more as the weeks go on. Contest prep is so simple. If you have a good coach leading you, let's keep that as like a staple. I don't need, like, if you have a shitty coach, it's not simple, but
or no coach.
All you have to do is execute it, man. All you have to do is do what you're supposed to do. Those pillars of success we talked about, maybe in that initial pilot episode or a different one. Train as hard as you can. At all, like Ron Partlow had a good story the other night. All of the best bodybuilders, contest prep, are not trained like savages. You might get a genetic anomaly who doesn't have to. You're not them. Don't idolize them. And from that sense, train as hard as you can. Give your best effort. Nutrition, we just hit a good one, but follow your meal plan. Don't cheat. Stay consistent with your meal timings. As prep goes on, don't try and don't do different things. I'm not adding sauces that I wasn't using 20 weeks out. I'm not doing different spices and like, you know what?
Diet drinks.
At the time, yeah, that's a big one. Like because I've caught myself like, I'm just bored. I want an energy drink, or I want to, you know, what crazy diet soda has marketing come up with that I don't know about because I never want it, but it's like, oh wait, there's a new diet Sunkist with a twist of lime in it. I got to try this. And don't get caught into that. Can you get peeled on with diet drinks? Yes, I allow my clients to have them too. But the point is like a lot of people don't have that control because you're withholding yourself from food. Jason Theopold coined it. It's calculated starvation in a way. So you're starting to find all these substitutes. Next thing you know, you're banging 2 energy drinks, a diet soda, you're clean, you're burned all day and you're fried, and that's going to show on the stage. So it's going to take some mental fortitude just to sit with the hunger you're having, embrace it. Cardio, this is an important one too. Stay consistent with your cardio. Don't fool with the plan. Just ride the line. Keep giving your best effort. There's days where I enjoy my cardio, even this late in prep. It's like, man, that's that time I get to spend in my head. I get to work towards my goal. And there's days where like, even I am talking myself out of going to do it. Like, I don't want to go do it. I look good. Why do I need maybe one session? And it's that conversation. It's like, no, you pussy, get in the car and go. Sleep, obviously you need it. Hydration, energy drinks, and all these fun things that don't have calories should not be replacing your water. Water is fucking vital to human performance and life. If you were stranded in a forest, you could go days without food, but without water, your days are numbered. Electrolytes. I didn't realize how important salt was in the beginning. I didn't have coaches that necessarily highlighted it. No fault on them. I don't think we were talking about electrolytes as an industry as a whole.
I thought it was a bad thing. I thought it was a degree now.
Salt, I give my clients a salt protocol, basically, like every meal, same amount of salt. That's year round. That's not just in prep where it matters, but that final week, a lot of it's determined by what you've been doing with salt for weeks and weeks. You're training your body for peak week with your with salt, and obviously it helps with pumps and performance. And there's numerous functions in the body that sodium plays a role in. So, but what I'm getting at is it's just so simple. You have to stay with how simple it is, especially I think getting to that 4-week out mark is where like now you're counting days. You're not counting weeks out. You're counting, I'm 26 days out. I'm 19 days out. Fuck, I'm 13 days out. I cannot, like, you're almost like, you're just so anxious to almost get to the final day, but so it's not like you're not enjoying it, but at the same time, it's like, and shit might not be changing, because if you're ready early, it's just like, hey, we just need to hold. We just need to sit tight. And you're like piss and vinegar revved up, ready to get up there and take everything. Like, chill. Avoid the hype. Avoid overstimulating yourself outside of when it needs to happen, which is your training. Find a like tunnel vision. Turner coined this on one of our other episodes. It's great to use in spurts. You're going to need it at certain points of your prep to push through. But if you're locked in on contest prep from the moment you wake up to the moment to a point where it's affecting you going to sleep, you will not have a good prep. And I think that's a huge reason why I'm not run down, is because like I'm not on Instagram. I'm not worried about who's doing any shows I'm doing. I'm practicing my posing, and that's actually a different point for me to make, but it's offense only. I do not care about one other person doing the shows. Even if I know them, I know some guys doing this. Like, I do not care. I want you all to be your best, but I do not care how your prep's going. I do not care what your coach is doing, where you're at with calories. I don't even care about most of that shit for myself. The only reason I figure it out is to like provide info on the podcast and to others. But I'm so focused on what else I have going on in life that, you know, prep almost becomes like what I do as like it's funny. Contest prep's important, but where I was when I was younger, it was like I was working a career I hated. So contest prep was the most important thing in my world. And now it's like, I love coaching and I love growing my business and I love doing this podcast with you and what we're building with the network, that I have so many other things going on that contest prep just it's effortless almost, because I've built it into my life. So, you know, I don't even know what the point of all that one was, other than, I guess, ride the midline, or it's a lot more simple than it's played out to be on social media. There's not a ton of crazy hacks, and, you know, if you're someone who's looking for hunger hacks and this hack and that hack, like you're setting yourself up for potential failure. You know, diet soda can work as a hunger hack, but it can also affect things too. You know, energy drinks. There's sometimes the best hunger hack is just water and going for a walk, or being busy doing something.
I recently had a friend that was dieting just to do like a shoot and just to get lean, like wanted to get really lean for the summer. And this kid lives it full throttle the way that we all do that compete. He just doesn't get on stage. But at one point he was starting to feel like a new level of hunger. And he's one of these guys that his hunger kind of grows as the day goes along. And then, you know, he's starving prior to bed. And he texts me the one night and he goes, "Hey man, I'm struggling. Like, you got any tricks or tips for hunger once all your food is done for the day?" And I said, "Yeah, I got this awesome tip called bring your ass to bed." And that's just it. Just go to sleep. Like, if your day is over and you've touched on all the main pillars of your day, go to bed. Don't sit there scrolling, looking at cake pops and fucking fat cookies and shit on Instagram. And I wanted to go back to like one of the main points that I pulled from what you were just saying is like how it's just almost effortless, or it's just going on. I don't know who this was that said it. I cannot take credit for it. And I'm frustrated that I'm not going to be able to give credit to the person that said it, because it's an awesome thing. But fat loss, someone said this, fat loss contest prep, it should really almost be like software that's just running in the background. Like as if you opened a browser on your computer and then just left it running in the background. Like, it's going, it's happening, but there doesn't need to be any of these like monumental things that are speeding it up or ramping it up here and now. You're not going to go do triple drop sets across every set to speed it up, or you're not going to add cardio to your plan to speed it up and all the shit. Like the plan, the calorie deficit, the drugs, all this different stuff, the cardio, it's all creating this like running software in the background. And then it leaves you like knowing that that's the case, you can be present and put effort and like mental focus into other shit. And then like you've harnessed it, and it's been cool to see as a friend and someone that lives the same lifestyle, like in and out of the gym as you. You've really harnessed that idea to where you just nail your main pillars And like, you're more productive now than you were at fucking 260 in the off season. So like you were saying earlier, like that awesome off season that you had where you're eating tons of food, you don't miss, the training is excellent. That sets up an opportunity for you to kind of not effortlessly, but stress-free go about the contest prep. Like again, I think it goes back to like those people that have that mentality where, you know, they're sending check-ins or messages during the prep, and they're like, you know, what about more cardio, or, you know, should we speed things up? And it's like, man, like, this is just the process. And if you're not happy with where you are right now, it's because you didn't do the work prior to set this up. And me stripping away all your food at 12 weeks out and burying you on the stairs, sure, we could get the body fat off, but you're going to look like Michael Phelps at the end of it. And that's because you didn't nail it in the off season to solidify the tissue that's going to last around within this kind of simple prep process. So there's a lot of good takeaways there, man. Now I got one too, and I know you're going to like this one. And it's very, very simple. And this is maybe something that everybody already knows, but I wrote to myself, if you want a muscle to grow, you have to train it. Simple, right? Simple enough. But I think I had this mentality because it was something that was kind of spewed around and talked about. And now we see these fucking science dorks on Instagram saying shit like this, where they say, your front delts get plenty of activation from all the chest pressing that you're going to do. There's going to be no need to train them for optimal stimulus. The rear delts need no additional volume because of all the rowing that you're doing. You know what that sounds like to me? A really, really surefire way to show up on stage with shitty delts. If you want something to be fucking big and impressive, you need to train it. So that goes for your front delts, for your rear delts, even for something like your traps. I mean, there are some people that just didn't know how to train their back and grew big traps. Okay, fine. Maybe you are that person and you don't need to directly train them. But if you're somebody that needs to improve your upper back or the height of your traps because of the width of your shoulders or anything, you need to fucking train them. I see so many people complain about their forearms or their calves. Fucking train them. Every single person that I've ever seen complain about their calves flat out does 0 sets for their calves during a working week. Like, what are we doing? If you wanted to grow your quads and then someone said, oh, well, how many sets of quads are you doing? And you just said, oh, none. I just figured they would grow from all the other stuff that I would do. People would look at you like you had lost your fucking mind or didn't know anything about bodybuilding or training. So, you know, I think just a simple takeaway is not to listen and get caught up in some of like the mainstream or like common little cliches that you hear about bodybuilding. Like, you may want just huge fucking delts because you think that's an awesome look. Well, guess what? If that's the case, you got to train them. And I can promise you, if you're one of these people that is full on neglecting a body part or a muscle group, abs included, like we hear it all the time. Oh, you don't need to train your abs. You know, if you just brace your core during your main movements, that'll be fine. Okay, do that, and then go stand on stage next to somebody that trained their abs 3 times a week, and it's going to be very obvious to the judges and every single person in the audience. So I just think all of these things, and again, this is coming from a place where I thought and believed this stuff, and I ended up with small shoulders, for example. It's almost like more and more the whole industry and, you know, the game of coaching and content creation and all this stuff is a way to present bodybuilding as an inclusive, simple, fun, and easy thing to do. It should be fun. You should enjoy bodybuilding. But more and more, the general theme about the things that I see online are people trying to simplify things and hack things and make things easier. And it's like, you keep doing that because me and my clients are going to work our fucking asses off and we're going to show up and look better than you guys. And that's just it.
Yeah, no, I love every bit of that. The abs one's very personal to me because I did that. I didn't train my abs.
I did it too.
for 3 years. Because why? Because they're visible. So I was like, I'm good. I'm one
Right.
of
You get lean and they're there.
I'm elite. But I've
Yeah.
had abs since I was 12. That doesn't
Right.
mean that it's going to train on a bodybuilding stage. Yeah, there's the outlines, but in 2021, I wasn't able to draw the mids. My TVA had no activation because I wasn't training it,
Right.
and it just looked like it was like a bloated ab look. Like yeah, it's abs. There's lines, but it's not a tight brick wall midsection like a Milos or a Max Charles or
Right.
any of these other guys. You know, that separates you on stage. When we start to like break down physiques and you look at a lineup, like look at 3 guys with washed out abs and then the guy with a brick wall. I guarantee your eyes gravitate towards him first. And that's important in a lineup because you don't want to be looked at last. That means you're
or you don't want to, or even worse, you don't want to get the chance to be looked at and then they gloss right over you because nothing caught their eye. Like the abs, the core is the centerpiece of the physique. We have seen time and time again guys that were spectacular early on in their career for size, and alongside that, the midsection grew. And then we look back at their career and say, ah, man, they were better early on. They were better at 230 instead of 255. I've heard countless retired bodybuilders say that.
Jay in 01 versus like he preferred 01 because of the sunken in abs.
Dude, Jay, you can make an argument that 98 Ronnie is the best version of Ronnie. You could say that Branch Warren looked better as of early 20s than he did later in his career. There's a lot of guys who had talked about it too. Absolutely. So, yeah, I mean, the thing is, guys, like this is very simple. Bodybuilding is very simple. There's not many other things that don't fall into this category where you literally just get out what you put in. If you put in work to your abs are going to look great. If you put in work to your calves, your rear delts, they are going to look great. If you put no work into them, you are going to get nothing in return. So, you know, as a bodybuilder, and like, not to get super deep here, but like this whole journey, when you really break it down, like, you know, you and I are probably never going to win an Olympia. I don't want to put a false stage or a false ceiling on us, but I think if we were going to do that, we probably have some more proof of that right now. But what does it really come down to is like, this is like a self-development and self-mastery journey. So if you are flat out ignoring parts of your body, how could you possibly say that you've mastered the craft of training or bodybuilding when there are full-on body parts that you neglected? It just doesn't make any sense to me.
No, I think, you know, because what's going to happen when you do need, like, rear delts make a lot of poses look 10 times better. So if you don't know how, a lot of people don't know how to activate the rear delts. They don't know how to target them. They don't know, like, so you see a side shot and it's like, I see a front delt and I see a medial delt, and then there's like a flat cave where the rear delt should be. Same thing with a tricep. I'll see in a side chest a straight flat. I had that. So I looked at my tricep training. I was like, why do I have that? Because I'm stopping every movement here versus full stretch. Now I have an arc to my tricep. There's contour in the back double in the front. Like it's like your point is very, you know, similar to what I'm thinking of. Like, it's training is practice to build what you're trying to build up here and what's going to ultimately improve your chances of being more competitive and placing better and winning. You know, everyone wants to win. It's like, okay, let's break down how to put yourself in a position to win. And
what did you do to
muscles and not practice? You got to practice to get better. That's it.
Right. You want to win, but what did you do? Did you work more than the guy that won? No, you didn't. And that's why you lost. That guy didn't skip rear delts. That guy went back in on rest days and did abs. Like, that guy went in and did calves. So
yeah, my rear delts are probably one of my stronger body parts. And I can tell you why. It's because Dusty and I absolutely got sadistic with how we trained rear delts for 3 years. Like, disgusting sets that I would actually have anxiety about because of how much pain they put you in.
And they can handle it. Like some of these little groups that we talked about, like some of these smaller muscle groups that people are pointing out that you don't have to train at all. I'm looking at it completely the opposite. Do you know how much fucking work you have to put into your rear delts to make them feel sore? like, or to not be able to train them the following day. I feel like I could probably train my rear delts every single day.
I've programmed people that have weak shoulders, side and rear. I've had them doing them 4 times a week before, every other day training. Like,
there you go.
You can separate, you can split up volume across the week to give yourself, think if I train my delts 4 times a week over, let's say, a 16-week training block, that's 64 times I've given them a chance to grow from.
Right.
64 times in 4 months.
Right.
Most people don't get that in a year.
Twice a week. Right. Like that's a year's worth of training, according to some of these guys that I see on Instagram that have no delts.
So, I would say, I guess if there's a caveat, it would be, coming up when I was doing DC, there was no direct rear delt work because we were just trying to get as much size on as quickly as possible and build the foundation, which that I agree. And I got younger guys that are like, hey, upper lower split, it does no good to focus on rear delts for you when you need a whole shoulder.
Yeah.
You need a whole back. So we're not going to focus on your one arm lat movements. Maybe we'll teach it, but at the end of the day, and that's the fun part is like, Ronald kind of touched on that in the other podcast is just doing those dog heavy hitter movements, like learning how to bang for your first 5 years and then seeing how the house looks. Where do we need more clay, more mold? All right, let's put it there and specialize. But before that, man, it's just like train like there's no tomorrow, because there isn't. But also, like, you're going to get a lot further with that approach than trying to micromanage your training down to like every fiber, in which, it's minutia.
All right, buddy. Contest prep, back to you.
I got a couple different ones I wanted to go on, but I'll just, a quick one, and this is just personal to me, is I did not ever in my life until this prep practice posing with a whole purpose to it. I didn't, I have an actual system written out of how much I need to practice per day. And now that's translated into my coaching. When my clients are 18 to 20 weeks out, if they're not working with a posing coach who is handling that for them, I give them a protocol of like, okay, we need to pose this amount of times, two rounds through after every workout. By this week's out, we're doing 3. And I got that idea from Andrew Barry. I saw on a Facebook group. And by the end, you've posed so much that you could do it blindfolded and contract every muscle on stage, because, I've been that guy that got on stage. Listen, Instagram's deceiving. It's a still shot. You didn't see how fucked up someone looked to get into that pose.
Yeah.
Were they happy feet on stage, bouncing all over? Was their gut bouncing out in and out before they finally flexed it? I have been that guy. 2021 was absolutely an embarrassment for me for what I know I'm capable of. And why? Because I didn't put in the work. I talked about it. I was like, yep, I got to practice posing. Another week goes by, I got to practice posing. Then Dusty's dying, and it's like, fuck, I'm only posing to check in with myself. That's the only practice I was doing. So, anybody listening, don't neglect your posing. For me, I can say that it is equally as important as training for me in contest prep. Equally as important. You still have to train. It doesn't mean you just stop training, but I learned a lot, by 16, 12 weeks out, like, I'm not doing the feats of strength that I'm capable of in the off season. I've completely switched around my training to more of a consistency and rhythm of reps. Almost like you made that comment about Phil Heath shooting free throws like Steph Curry. Like, that's almost in my head now when I train, is like, fill the chest, there's no like, get to the top, pause, Hail Mary rep, because I don't have the recovery budget for it right now. And the risk versus reward certainly isn't there with some of the strains I've had in prep. So, back to posing is like, if you don't know how to display that muscle and fluidly transition through your poses and have all eyes, all eyes are going to be on you because you're in condition and you know how to show it, or they're going to be on you real quick. They're going to be like, not in condition, can't pose, far left. Thanks for your donation to the MPC.
Yeah, I saw a quote online, and as you were talking through this, it reminded me of this quote. Again, I'm not going to be able to give credit to whoever it was, but it was like the difference between an amateur and a professional is that an amateur will practice until they get it right, and a professional will practice until they can't get it wrong. And man, that just says it all right there. And then another point about like getting into the habit of doing that, I have made the mistake of not solidifying what my posing process was leading into a show, until 4 weeks out or 6 weeks out, and you're fucking gassed and you're beat to shit by then. And it's a lot more difficult to instill a new habit when mental and physical fatigue is that high. So started at 24 weeks out, started at 20 weeks out when you got all the energy in the world and it's a no-brainer and you're just enjoying doing it.
And you're burning fat too. Like
100%.
It's neat in a way.
100%. Well, and it's just, there's something to be said to stretching and contracting a muscle over and over again and owning the fibers. Like I've talked, like when we wrap up shows or whatever, I've talked about like having muscles on command. You see it on stage in person right away without any questions, because every single one of those guys that got on stage posted a still shot on Instagram of the one split second where everything was separated. But then you get up there under the lights and everybody's moving around and it's in real time, and you see very quickly who's got to reach around and feel their hamstrings, who's got to look down and rub their quads to make them feel it. And that makes a big difference compared to the guy that just goes and everything fucking lights up and then they hold it for 15 seconds. So like you said, it's not that one is more important than the other because they're all pieces of a recipe, but the posing is just as critical as everything else, because you can nail everything else and pose like a fool up there. And guess what? No one's going to say, man, that guy couldn't pose, but holy shit, he was incredible. He was this, he was that. It was all anyone is going to talk about is, man, that guy had a lot of muscle, but his posing sucked. He looked like a complete amateur up there. That's the only sentiment when I see someone that looks like that. So, man, the posing, you're right. It is such a huge deal.
I watched a guy at Nationals. He's still got his pro card, but he should have been in the overall, but he got a second place pro card. And in my eyes, from where I was and with Turner, it was because of his posing. He didn't know how to show how big he was.
Yeah.
This dude was a brick and he was posing like he was a class lower. And it was like, man, like this upside is like, man, if you fix that, you're going to be a nasty pro. The downside is like, man, you might have been the overall Nationals champion instead of a second place pro card winner.
I mean, the two things that come to mind, and I talked about this with a client recently. I had a client come down to my gym that's in prep, and we train, and then I fucking put him through it. And the two showings that I referenced to him, I said, I want you to go back and look at 2020 Rami in that first call out. Watch him hit a pose and hold it like a fucking statue for 30 seconds and tell me that that wasn't a huge reason why he won. Because he was good, but I mean, you look at even this past year, I don't think that the physique is that much different. Whereas he posed with way more confidence and way more composure in 2020. Like this year, you see him and it's like he's defeated up there immediately. And then the other one that I referenced is Nick's Arnold win, because everyone had something to say about his waist and this, that, and the third. And I was so incredibly impressed with Nick Walker at the 21, I guess, Arnold, where he just looked like a fucking bronze statue. Every shot, he just sunk his abs into it, hit it and held it, and he was not going anywhere. And that was like one of the cooler moments just as a bodybuilding fan, because I just draw so much inspiration from people that are elite at what they do, one, but I have always admired people that talked it and then fucking brought it. And that's Nick. So again, it's you get out what you put into it. And if you put nothing into your posing until 4 weeks out, well, it's going to look like you put nothing into your posing, because I promise you, I don't care if you do the fucking Mickey Mouse Classic in Boise, Idaho, there will be someone in your class that practiced the entire prep and they are going to embarrass you. So
yeah, they've been gunning for that Mickey Mouse Classic for 52 weeks.
right, that Mickey Mouse Classic was their Olympia.
I'll say if and because I've been this guy, so if you are not having posing practice sessions that are so rigorous that you have sweat dripping off of you onto the floor, you are not practicing your posing hard enough. Hitting a couple front doubles into the mirror after a chest day or after an arm day is not what I'm talking about, like you see in most gyms right now. That is not posing practice. Not one of those kids that does shit like that could actually hold an entire pose and run through a rotation of poses. They would be fucked. That's harder than their workouts.
Yep.
That's not practicing posing. I actually just took on a new kid the other night and he was like, I'm pretty good at posing. I'm like, no, you're not. I've never even seen you pose, and I can guarantee you are not good at posing because I'm 10 years into this and I'm not good at posing.
Right.
So buckets of sweat should be dripping off of you when you are actually practicing your posing. That's why, like, every off day I've had this year or this prep has had 2 posing rounds throughout the day, one in the morning and one in the evening. And it's sweat, it's bucket, it's multiple showers because I'm just evaporating sweat off of me, pounding water in between. And somebody that was close to Flex Wheeler, I don't remember who told me this, but he said in the 90s, it like 20 to 25 minutes posing practice after, like that's all they did is practice posing. And this was before there was a reason to for social media and all that. Like that was just what they did to be their best.
Yep. Yeah.
It's crazy.
Speaks for itself, right? What do you think? Have you done 3?
I think that was my 3rd. You can close it or we can do whatever you want.
I'm gonna close. I'll close it, but I gotta eat, so we're gonna go. I'm gonna make it brief.
Yeah, that's cool.
This is a mistake that even I've made. I think I've probably said this on this podcast or in conversations with people that might listen to this. But I'm talking off season. The sentiment that insulin makes you fat is just so ass backwards. And I've done it. I've gotten fat on insulin and then blamed the insulin. And 100% of the time, what that really is people matching their food to a arbitrary insulin number. Instead of saying, this is how much food I need to eat for my circumstance, what's an appropriate amount of insulin for that amount of food? I'm not going to, it's just that simple. That we don't need to dive into it and rant on it. But if someone says to you, oh, no, I don't use insulin, or a coach says, I don't want you to use insulin, it's going to get you fat, I would take a hard look at that person and their credentials, because that is just simply not the case. If you know how to organize it and you get with someone that knows how to organize it, I don't want to say a game changer, because it is just a glucose management, blood sugar management tool. But there are also different ways to implement it that it can springboard you forward. And I'm just going to leave it at that. I'm not going to dive into it because I'm paying somebody that knows how to do it, and I'm not going to give that away. But
it's anabolic. That's all that needs to be said about it. It's anabolic.
The most anabolic hormone in our body. So you get that right, and then you have growth in the mix, you have gear in the mix, you eat a fuck ton of whole food, and you train like the baddest motherfucker in your gym. Very quickly, people are going to notice, and people are going to take note of how you look, and they're going to want to know why. So I'm going to leave it at that. It's time to go pound some more chicken and rice for me. For Tommy Styles, 2 weeks out, I'm Joseph PIRCHER. This was a Thinking Man's podcast on the Muscle Media Network, and we are out.